Hey guys, John Vanderveer here. Today I'm talking about Joseph Kony and the Make Kony Famous 2012 campaign. I got several articles I'll be citing, including one of my own, a scholarly paper I wrote for my comparative politics class on the country of South Sudan. It touches on a few relevant topics. So Kony's a douchebag. You know, the guy's horrible. To give you some background on him, he's the leader of the LRA, which is the Lord's Resistance Army. He claims to be a Christian. He's not. He's not a Christian. He does very unchristian things. I'll just shoot him down in one fell swoop. He actually created an 11th commandment at one point in time: "Thou shalt not ride a bicycle." He really did this. And as absurd as that commandment is, the reason it makes him a non-Christian is you cannot add to the Bible. Because if you add to the Bible, that's a form of idolatry. You're putting words in God's mouth, and you're essentially creating your own God and worshiping a God of your imagination. So that's idolatry, so that's not, a Christian wouldn't do that. He's worshiping the wrong God. And actually this confirms something else he admitted, which is where he actually hears from somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 160 different spirits, and one of them he claims is the Holy Spirit. So actually, it's not terribly surprising if you know where he's from. He's from Africa, and in particular, he's been in South Sudan recently, which they intermix a lot of Christianity and African animism, or African shamanism, spiritualism. So you get some weirdos like that, but that's not really a Christian. Anyway, not my point at all. So Lord's Resistance Army is, guilty of doing crazy stuff, murder, abduction, mutilation, forcing children into prostitution, and some really crazy stuff. One thing I'll be citing is my fiance's blog. She's done 2 articles on this, and her father is a talk show host, and he's done a few talk shows on this, so links all down there, you can see that. And another one, if y'all know Sam Childers, he's the Machine Gun Preacher, movie out, The Machine Gun Preacher. Very good. It touches on a lot of the same topics that the Make Kony Famous Invisible Children thing is doing. And basically the point is that Joseph Kony, while he's nuts out of his mind, needs to be brought down. He is a small fraction of the larger picture. South Sudan was originally part of Sudan. Only very recently did it break off, become South Sudan. What's being called North Sudan, but it's really just Sudan, is a radical Muslim country, and the president is Bashir. Okay, and he's a radical Muslim. And South Sudan, as I previously mentioned, is a combination of Christianity and African traditional religions. You can find this in my article. And so South Sudan is a fledgling country. There's 2 main problems it's encountering as it develops. One of them is the religious difference between the radical Muslims to the north and its own primarily Christian and animistic religions. The secondary problem is diversity. Even within the African religions, we generalize them as animism, but the particular spirits they worship are diverse, and they cause intra-tribal conflict. You know, they'll worship this spirit, and they'll get pissed off and kill each other. So, although there's that religious diversity, there's also a larger cultural diversity, there's a lingual diversity. There's something like just many dialects, and in fact, not even just dialects, outright languages, many different languages. But they've taken steps to kind of get over this, right? They've created an official language, English, and they actually have, I think, 5 official languages. I'm doing this off the top of my head. So they're consolidating the culture. There's that cultural identification that's coming through that's necessary to overcome a lot of that stuff. But there's still the problem of the Muslims to the north, which they can't really take care of directly. Especially not right now, given that they are very frail. It's a very poor country. Infrastructure is terrible. um, things like this. By the way, if anyone from Sudan is watching on that very off chance, a very good idea might be to create an oil pipeline to the east going through Ethiopia to the coast, get the U.S. to fund it, U.S. contractors to build it, and just make a contract with the U.S. that you're going to sell oil out of that at a discounted rate in exchange for building the oil pipeline, which you know you need to do, you just can't get it done because you don't have the resources to do it. So that would enrich you. It would also enrich Ethiopia because the port would be on Ethiopia since Sudan is a landlocked country. South Sudan is a landlocked country. So that would enrich both of y'all. Y'all are both very poor countries that need the money. And actually, as countries get richer, their cultural diversity naturally fades, and their religious conflicts and and things like this, cultural tribal conflicts tend to go away. So it would actually help your democracy get a culture that you're trying to identify. And we need cheap gas anyway, because we're getting ripped off over here. So, South Sudan is really in trouble, and there's thousands of lives dying. Sam Childers, Machine Gun Preacher, makes this point in his video. I'll put the link down below. That Joseph Kony, he is, bad dude, but really, if you're familiar with the situation, the problems that he created are on the slowdown and mostly in the past. The present situation is the Muslim genocide of Christians. And in fact, Bashir is actually the one funding Joseph Kony to begin with. And that's the connector right there, if I didn't make that point earlier. So Kony wouldn't be able to do anything if he didn't have money, right? And he's getting his money from this guy anyway. And there's official statements of Kony saying that he got money from Bashir, and official statements of Bashir giving Kony money. So it's a very clear, very documentable link. And the Ugandan army, okay, don't even get me started, man. Look, there's a lot of people down out there. Joseph Kony is doing a few of it, but he's not the big bad wolf. The point is we need to keep our eyes on the ball. And there's two more hidden elements I want to touch on. One is this invisible children is a bunch of scum, okay? They're taking the money that's supposed to go help the cause and putting it in their pocket, right? Over 66%, over 2/3 is going to salaries, and their financial statements are available on the web. So roughly 1/3 is being used to make Joseph Kony famous, okay? And the idea is that we're going to get him really famous, everyone's going to get pissed off at him, and then he's going to get arrested. Well, I got news for you. We already hate him, and there's already nothing we can do, and this is nothing new. This is a very old situation. Laws on the books prevent us from arresting him, okay? And when I say us, I mean America. Now, perhaps there are other organizations that could do something. And certainly, I guess we could just have, the CIA secretly, without telling anyone, just go kill him, knock him off. And so, I'll cross my fingers that happens, because the guy needs to go. But we shouldn't take our eye off the ball, which is Bashir and the Muslim problem. The real problem in the Middle East and in North Africa is not some tribalistic Africans, it is the Muslims. And they're killing people, they'll cut people's heads off. Go look at the videos on the internet. It's disgusting. So that's one part of it. Here's the other part. I, along with numerous other people, have a hunch this may be turned into a political issue. Because after all, what makes it to the mainstream media that isn't politicized these days? So the question is, and besides, how did this video get millions of views in 5 days? Millions of views. You don't do that without some major money, some major connections, so on and so forth. So the question is, how is this going to be politicized? Because we know that powers that be are responsible for making this viewed. And if we're educated, then we know that powers that be are the same powers, if not affiliated with political powers, right? So rich people, people with a ton of money, are either buddies with politicians or they are politicians. And there's tons of ways to show that. I think the easiest way would be I'll just put a video in the description. Surprise. Okay. Moving on. So, yeah, so how's it going to be politicized, right? And the speculation is, on behalf of myself and some others, is that they're going to try and make it a religious issue, and that perhaps that's what even sparked this off. Because as I said, Kony's not a Christian, but he claims to be. And there's a lot of liberal Christians that think that the only thing it takes to be a Christian is you just say, I'm a Christian, and then boom, you're magically a Christian, which is not true. But furthermore, this is the idea of the secular and other religions, right? So if you claim to be a Christian, you're a Christian in their view. You know, they don't really give 2 cents about it, because if you're a Christian and this other Christian are having an argument about who's the real Christian, in the eyes of the non-Christian, it doesn't matter. That's just inter-Christian squabbling, right? They're both just Christian bigots, right? So they don't really differentiate between a real Christian or born-again Christian, evangelical, you know. They don't really care if you're Catholic or Protestant, you know. You're a Christian in their eyes, if you claim to be. You know, they don't really worry about, the Bible says you can do this and you can't do that. So they don't really care if you're a real Christian, right? You say you're a Christian, they trust you. So to the seculars and the other religions, I mean, you know, Buddhists, whatever, to them, they have a propensity to think that Kony is a Christian, unless they do something like watch this video and get educated. So they will buy the argument that Obama will put forth that there are crazy Christians just like there are crazy Muslims, and it's no big deal, right? And these crazy Muslims are not that bad, right? Iran, Iraq, we can be diplomatic with them. They're building a nuke, it's all good. We can just talk to them. Good neighbor policy will work. Why will good neighbor policy work? Because, yeah, there are those crazy Muslims, just like there are those crazy Christians. But most Muslims are good, you know, life-loving people, just like Christians, just like everyone, right? Okay, well, if you're familiar with Islam, that's a load of crap. But to the ignorant person, this is a perfectly logical argument. And so I believe that's how they're going to politicize it in one way, and they're also going to politicize it in another way, and that is this religious mandate for religious organizations to provide health insurance for abortions, abortifacients, things like this that they may have a disagreement of conscience with. They're going to play this card and say, look, some of y'all Christians are very crazy, and the implication is that government is saying y'all Christians are crazy, so the legitimacy resides with the government, so we have every right to mandate you. Even though it violates your conscience, we can still mandate you because your conscience may be crazy, you know? So they're going to say, look at this crazy Kony Christian, and they're going to push on the health insurance mandate. And they're going to topple over the First Amendment and right to conscience and things like that, right? So those are a couple of ways they could be politicized. You know, backing off the politicizing point, Muslims in the Middle East are the major problem. Of course, we already know that. We can see that in foreign policy debates in the Republican primary. It's such a point of interest, right? Israel, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Arab Spring, North Africa. These are all hot topics. And the key thread that ties them all together that the mainstream media loves not to talk about is Muslims. Okay? So y'all can go do your own research on that, or I'll talk about it in a different video if we want to get particular with the problems of Islam. I'm not trying to get particular with it. I'm just saying they kill people and they screw shit up. So there's that. And backing off even a step further from that, Joseph Kony is a bad dude. Okay, this Kony Kony 2012 is good for shedding light on a topic that the alternative media, really including myself, including you, if you decide to open a blog or a YouTube or something, the alternative media being defined as everyone except the mainstream media, all right? So it attracted attention to this topic that the alternative media can take and turn just a little bit and get it to what we really need to be focusing on, right? Which is our major international issues. So it's good in that respect, and it's good because Kony needs to go down, like I've said 100 times already. But it's just a fraction of the issue, and let's not take our eye off the ball. And let's not be so ignorant that we feel bad for Africa, so we start throwing money to an organization we haven't researched, namely Invisible Children, which is a relatively corrupt organization from all observable standards. All right. So if you find another way to donate to Africa, and let me give you a hint, there's several evangelical Christian missions going on in South Sudan right now, because it's a fledgling democracy, it's an impoverished country, and it's a largely Christian country that has the potential for many more Christians to be converted from the African tribalism. All right, so it's good return on investment as far as evangelical Christian missionaries are concerned. So there's a lot of those organizations out there doing stuff, digging wells for clean water, building infrastructure, and obviously preaching it to people. So I would dare to say that it would be a much better investment to give some of those organizations money than to give Invisible Children money. But y'all go and do your own research, right? I'm not even going to name names of the organizations I'm talking about because I want you to do your research. But go ahead and, I'll give you a hint. Go research Christian organizations who are digging wells in South Sudan, and you should be able to find who I'm talking about pretty quick. I think there's only even 3 organizations doing this, and one of them is the big dog. Anyway, so that's my stuff on Kony 2012. And be sure, I'm going to put a bunch of links in the description. I know y'all don't always watch them, but be sure to watch this first link. It's Sam Childer's video. And Sam Childers has been in Africa. He's the machine gun preacher, right? He's been there for a long time. And he's been in these conflicts, these very violent military conflicts. And he's been obviously preaching, but also doing charity and protecting lots of lives. So that's why he's called the machine gun preacher. And he knows what he's talking about. All right, take care.